Hello, everyone. We are here with Guy Maddin. He's one of the directors of Stump the Guesser, which is selected for the international competition at Curtas. Guy, welcome. Thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to be able to speak with you. I'd like to start by asking how the idea for this particular film came about and what was the inspiration for this story.
Um, I love the way it started out. It was a film commission. Uh, an orchestra that works out of Cologne, Germany, called Ensemble Musikfabrik, approached me because they knew I worked on commissions sometimes. I've made some of my better films, as a matter of fact, as a filmmaker for hire, and so, you know, and I love getting commissions because it means someone thinks well enough of you that you could make a film and they trust you with their money. And so it makes me really proud and a little bit scared that you know, it's one thing to fail yourself, but to fail really nice people. So they asked me and my partners, Evan and Galen Johnson, the brothers Johnson, who work with me now. We form the filmmaking collective, Development Limited. If we would be interested in making a short film for them that they could play music to live for their live audiences. What they initially wanted was really interesting. They wanted us to make a film that could then be cut into pieces and jumbled into small fragments and reordered like shuffled cards in a deck of cards, and that they would project for their orchestra and then surprise them, and that they would have to improvise orchestral music while watching the film for the first time. That later proved impractical because making movies is expensive, and after they saw what we made, they decided they would rather commission composers to write different scores instead. But that's another story. But right now, so they've got enough money to commission 2 composers to write different scores, and they're going to play the movie twice, back to back, with 2 different scores, and audiences will be able to see this sort of musical Kuleshov effect, to see, you know, how much the score can change a movie. And believe me, it can change a movie a lot. Anyway, they had a theme. They really wanted to, I think, sometimes this is just part of getting money, a grant from the government, but you get a literary theme for projects sometimes. And I think they had gotten some money based on paying tribute to the Soviet absurdist writer Daniil Harms, or Carms, or Charms, however you say his name. I'm still not sure how you say it. But he was a guy who wrote in the first half of the 20th century and who died during the siege of Leningrad. He was, while he was being starved out by the German occupiers, he was also being persecuted by Stalin for his writing and for being an absurdist, although he's mostly famous during his lifetime as a children's author, and an eccentric, but he also had a bad illness. And then there's rumors that he was maybe even murdered in his prison, hospital, starving city. Just a horrible accumulation of tragedy at the end of Daniil Harm's life. And in his writing, which are very short, fragmentary pieces that zigzag sharply and abruptly and surprisingly and very absurdly, there's a real spirit that we all loved. And it was a simple matter of just reading him and then sitting down and writing a script that wasn't an impersonation of Harms, but was a kind of like where Harms and our sensibilities overlapped, and where we felt maybe Harms would be pleased with the compromises he would have to make, like my partners and I make when we write with each other, that we would all be happy in one big room, and and we'd have lots of food for him too. So we wrote in that spirit, and then just shot it one day when we really needed money, when we seemed to be having our own siege of Leningrad back home in Winnipeg, Canada. We shot it in the heart of a very, very cold winter in an abandoned bank in the basement of a bank. It was quite scary down there. And we just loaded up some Winnipeggers into the building and shot what happened.
Um, can you speak a little bit about the challenges that this particular film um, made for you? Because I read that you had to use a lot of green screen in this one. So, and
Yeah,
maybe that was difficult for the actors and yourself.
well, yeah, we shot it in the heart of winter, like I said, and it was, it was one of those cold ones where it was minus 40 Celsius or minus 45, minus 50, even with wind chill. And then, and so even though a lot of the story is set outside, we had to shoot inside, but we saw it as an opportunity to practice our green screen chops, to see if we could get better at it for feature films. It's one of the great things about accepting short film commissions. They don't take as long, although the post-production on this was quite labor intensive. Evan and Galen did most of it, well, all of it actually. I was busy teaching somewhere. So the difficulties lie in finding a space, and the bank wasn't very big. And so for the crowd scenes, we had to shoot people individually in front of a green screen. And then Evan just added them to one another until he had a crowd. And some of the crowd scenes are quite big in the movie. But he really got good at compositing things. So that when we have to make a feature film that features compositing, we'll be ready for it. And we're already planning far more elaborate projects with a lot of green screen in it. And Evan is getting quite good at it. Galen did all the sound design. And I don't know, it was just a matter of and then I guess the real challenge was just that compositing just took forever. You do have more freedom. You can rearrange everyone into almost any mise en scène that you feel like having, but it's a matter of choosing and then getting people. You don't want it to look, you want it to look artificial in a charming way. You don't want it to look artificial in a stupid and hilarious, like, I don't know. It's a hard place.
Yeah.
Talking about stupid, the movie is kind of stupid. But we want it to be funny and stupid, which is the riskiest of all kinds of movies, because if you make a funny and smart movie, that's a coward's way out, because then if the jokes don't land, if the jokes don't work, you've at least got a smart movie. But if you make a funny and stupid movie and it's not funny, you're just left with stupid. That's pretty risky. So, but we decided to go for it and make a funny and stupid movie. And we feel pretty good. We feel, there's no safety net when you're working with stupid.
But the film is definitely very funny, and but at the same time in a surreal way, and it almost plays out like an eccentric melodrama. So I was wondering if working with a mix of the different genres and styles, is that something that you wanted to explore with this film?
Yeah, we had all, Galen, Evan, and I had all thought we'd left silent film behind with our last feature, The Forbidden Room, and we were. Since then, we've made some found footage movies, and the scripts we're writing are set in the 20th century, like in color, and in the present, even in the 21st century. But a commission for an orchestra pretty much has to be dialogue free. So we went back one more time to silent movie genres, and then it just seemed like, since we're all fairly left wing, we didn't want to make fun of communism the way, like totalitarian states are no fun, and Stalin was a monster, but we didn't want to make fun of communism or anything like that. So there's that genre of, but so it's a fine line to walk. You want to have state guessing inspectors and state geneticists and things like that, but you don't want to get into that mockery. I forget what other genres are there. I guess sort of carnival, noir, fairy tale, Lon Chaney-like kind of horror movie or something. But I think the genre, and I've always had trouble fitting into one genre. Um, all three of us co-directors love to pile as many things as possible into a movie. And if we've already filled a movie up with things, we'll often take the things back out of the script and start sticking them together. So in the hopes that we can even like make compound molecules out of the basic elements in our movie and fit even more atomic weight into the thing. So it ends up being pretty densely packed with ideas, and often the ideas cancel each other out, and then good ideas become stupid ones, but at least the spirit lives on in the stupidity. The genre, I would say, is just whatever. It's impossible to define the genre of Daniel Harms. He's really got something strange, and I recommend that you check out some of his. I check out anyway. They're all short pieces. They can be read in a minute or two or less, and he's just got a really wild, obsessive nature, and he's pretty bleak, but hilarious. And so maybe the genre is just karmic. I don't know.
I will definitely try to read some of his stuff. Thank you for the
Sure.
recommendation. I guess what I was trying to say when I was saying genre, I was saying there's a mix of comedy and then surrealism. So it's almost like the film is showing, is normalizing something surreal, you know, like how the main character, he has to punch the clock at his work. There's a guessing inspector, there's a guessing license, you know, the film shows like that's part of this universe. And is it part of the fun of making the film, is creating this world with its own rules?
Yeah. There's often, you know, we're all very ambitious and we work hard and stuff like that, but there's also times when we can just sort of feel our lazy streaks sort of synchronizing perfectly. And I think we decided that we should all just watch as many Popeye cartoons as possible as research for this movie. And even after we'd seen maybe 5 or 10 Popeye cartoons, we'd really seen enough. We knew what we were getting, but no, we had to be very thorough and exhaustive in our research. So we watched many more Popeye cartoons. They're only 6 minutes each, but we just kept watching and watching them. And what I like about Popeye cartoons is how surreal they are. These are the real early ones, the ones like from 1932 and 1933. Most of them are on YouTube. They're really fun. And a lot of times they have labels right on them. You know, they don't waste any time. So if the screenwriters for the Fleischer Brothers wanted you to know that the swimming pool had a shark in it, they would have a sign that said, you know, shark pool or something like that. Or, you know, or if they wanted you to be sure you knew that was a doorbell on the wall, they'd have a sign that said doorbell in really big letters. And we just decided in the spirit of things to have that kind of stuff going on. So there's lots of name tags and signs, and then Galen, who's our, you know, he's a co-director, but he's also a production designer and a graphic artist, came up with lots of great fonts. He's just like the font whisperer. He really knows his typesetting and his letter designs, and even created his own fonts for this cartoon of a movie. I guess we were really, by the time we finished watching all our Popeye cartoons, we sort of wished the Fleischer Brothers were still alive, and we decided to make a movie that maybe they would like too. And then we could imagine watching the movie after with Daniel Harms and Max Fleischer together in the same room. And so we like how much bounce there is in the Fleischer Brothers work, and we like how much unpredictability there is in the Harms. And we like to be able to surprise each other with all sorts of sudden turns. All of us do, Max and Daniel and us three. So we're happy with the level of collaboration we had between us living directors and the two dead artists.
One of the things that struck me with the film is that, well, I mean, you have a very long and rich filmography, but in this particular case, when you are looking at similar works with that try to that are come close to the silent films, you know, films like The Heart of the World or Send Me to the Lighted Chair, or even The Forbidden Room. There would usually be a more convoluted narrative with lots of concurring stories. And I thought that here it was more a conventional narrative. There wasn't so much of that. And was it that something that you wanted to maybe explore more in this film, a more classical storytelling? Maybe
Yeah,
that was in this when you were deciding the script.
that's a very good observation. We tried to bring as much formal rigor to the screenwriting process as you would to a feature film, even though it's only 19 minutes long. We wanted it to have 3 acts and do all those things that classics, how to write a screenplay textbooks tell you to do. I wish I had read one of those textbooks 35 years ago, but it was Evan who read one a couple years ago, and then he gave me a précis of it, just some highlights on a pad of paper. He showed me. He read a book on the sequence approach to screenwriting, which breaks all movies down to 8 sequences. Each sequence having a first, a second, and a third act, and a climax, and a resolution that gets the protagonist into more trouble. All that screenwriting textbook stuff. But so we did try to do that, and if we did do that in The Forbidden Room, I don't remember doing it. I think we were writing screenplays for The Forbidden Room is an assembly of 17 short films, broken in half and then nested inside of each other like a giant Russian doll. And I don't think those scripts were written with the same formal rigor. They're still stories, but they're unconventional stories. Plus there's 17 of them just fractured and shoved in together. So this one is one story. And so it probably does feel like it's a little less headache inducing, a little more easy to breathe around. And so if you get lost, you can always find yourself rather quickly.
Yes, definitely. I want to ask you a couple of more final questions. I've got a quote that I read about you by J. Halberman, where he said that you were either the most experimental mainstream filmmaker or the most mainstream experimental filmmaker. Is it appealing for you to work in the border between these two definitions?
I got to say, when I read that, whenever he said that, it made me very happy. I normally don't read reviews of my work because it either makes me too sad or makes me too smug, too happy. And it's better just to know, to feel you know what you've made. It's enough just to watch once or twice with an audience, then you know what you've done, and you can, while the mistakes are still fresh in your memory, you start planning your next picture. But Hoberman's always been an ultra sensitive viewer and a very smart writer. And I've made an exception, and I like what he said about my film Cowards Bend the Knee specifically. It's his favorite of my movies, and that thrills me. And I don't think he's written anything on this movie, and he may not. It's also playing at the New York Film Festival, so maybe he will. But that's a sweet spot, you know, because I've always felt that deep inside I'm trying to entertain people and reach an audience. But then when I've failed to do that, I've had as a consolation the fact that I've alienated audiences as much as, say, David Lynch did with Eraserhead, more so even. But because I was always pretty dead serious about the movies I made, even while being ridiculous. And I don't know, I think he read me perfectly. He read my heart perfectly. I really wanted to be both an experimental filmmaker and viewed that way, and I guess respected that way or whatever, and even shunned that way by people. But I also wanted to reach as many people in the audience. I especially started to feel that way when I started to add live elements to my movies. For Brand Upon the Brain, I had an orchestra and sound effects artists and a singer and a narrator. And for My Winnipeg, I narrated it live. And you don't want to alienate an audience when you have live elements. When you're the narrator, you want to, you can see the entire audience, and you don't want people to be getting up out of their seats and going to the bathroom, but never coming back. You can tell when people are sagging in their seats out of boredom. And so you could put a little more mustard on your voice and wake them up, and maybe even change your narration to keep them more engaged on the fly. And you become more of a showman. And so I really am an experimental filmmaker that's kind of totally willing to sell out as a populist somehow. But I can't do either anyway. I do both. If you do both, you do neither somehow.
Okay. The other quote that I found it very curious, especially with what you just said, is a quote I think from 1997, when you said, "I have to say to myself, this is probably the last movie I will make. No one will allow me to make another movie after this." And that you felt that was very liberating for you. Do you still feel this way when you are working with every movie?
It feels good to me to be able to say that. This is just in case. Well, I've rephrased it slightly. I'll just say I got to make this movie like it's the last movie I'll ever make. So in other words, put everything you got into it. It's not like I don't think I should be saving myself for the day after tomorrow. I gotta try my hardest. And you're very lucky to be making films. Filmmakers are extremely lucky people. Whenever I find myself feeling sorry for myself, I just have to remind myself how lucky I am to have a job. It often doesn't pay anything for years, but it's enabled me to teach. I teach at various universities. I've even taught at Harvard, for crying out loud. If anyone had ever looked at my grade point average at Harvard, they would never have hired me. I was a terrible student, but because I was a filmmaker, I got a job there. And so I'm so lucky. And so all I got to do whenever I'm feeling sorry for myself is just tell myself, you get to make a movie. You get to try to make a movie anyway. I'm 64 years old and I call myself an aspiring filmmaker still. I guess on income tax returns, I call myself a filmmaker, but in my secret moments, I call myself an aspiring filmmaker, because it means I just have to keep trying harder. And I don't know, it feels good. I think I'm still learning a lot, and film's changing so quickly now anyway, both how it's financed, which is boring to talk about, and how it's screened, which is becoming boring to talk about. But also just the explosion of invention in the way movies are put together now, and how genres have just shattered and reformed themselves into new hybrid movies. It's really exciting to me. There have always been cinema essays, film essays, going back to Chris Marker in the early 50s, and even to Ed Wood's Glenn or Glenda, a movie I'll champion. It's using outdated terminology for the trans world and the cross-dressing world, but it's really a trailblazing cine essay. I don't know, I'm just kind of excited by the possibility of film and how it can do so many astonishing things now that audiences are eating up. It's so cool. And so I feel like while film is growing, I need to grow along with it as well. It's true, I need more naps now than I used to, but I was always a pretty nap reliant person, even in my 20s. But it seems to me the naps are harder to get up from some days.
Well, I think that's a good point to end this interview with.
We all need a nap now. Yeah.
No, but thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. We look forward to more other works from you in the future, and to maybe see you sometime in ViladoCon. Thank you so much.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Great talking to you. Bye-bye.